1975, the year when rock was everywhere. Vinyl spun in every living room, FM radio ruled the airwaves, and every song felt like it was speaking directly to you. We'd gather in smoky basements, crowded record shops, or behind the wheel on warm summer nights, letting the music pour through the speakers like electricity. Today, we're dropping the needle on 10 unforgettable songs from 1975 that still have the power to take us right back there. Gritty, unflinching, and unapologetically Southern, Saturday Night Special was Lynyrd Skynyrd at their most hard-edged, opening with Gary Rossington's searing guitar riff and a thunderous backbeat from Artemis Pyle. The track grabs you by the collar and doesn't let go. This wasn't the good time barroom boogie people often associated with the band. It was a biting commentary on America's obsession with handguns, wrapped in raw, swampy rock swagger. Released on their Nothin' Fancy album, it stood out as a statement piece in a year packed with party anthems. The blend of blues grit and hard rock punch made it both politically sharp and musically irresistible. For many of us in '75, this song felt dangerous, and that was the point. The kind of track you'd hear blasting from a Chevelle SS on a Friday night. Windows down, the lyrics hitting just as hard as the snare drum. In small towns, it sparked late-night debates over coffee and all-night diners. In cities, it became an underground anthem for those fed up with violence in their streets. It's one of those rare rock songs that managed to sound both like a warning and a celebration of the music's rebellious edge. Lyrically, Ronnie Van Zant didn't mince words, calling out the Saturday Night Special, a cheap, easily available handgun, as something better thrown to the bottom of the sea. In a time when most bands steered clear of controversial topics, Skynyrd charged straight into it, trusting their fans to get the message. And musically, they matched the urgency with a relentless groove. Billy Powell's piano rolling underneath like a runaway train. Even decades later, Saturday Night Special still sounds fresh, a reminder of when rock could be loud, proud, and willing to take a stand. It's a snapshot of 1975's raw edge, when FM radio wasn't afraid to push boundaries, and bands like Skynyrd weren't afraid to tell it like it was. From the very first funky guitar lick, Shining Star bursts out of the speakers like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. While earth, wind, and fire are often celebrated for their rich harmonies and soulful ballads, this track was pure kinetic energy, a blast of brass, bass, and optimism that seemed tailor-made for both the dance floor and the open highway. Built on Verdin White's elastic bass groove and the punchy horn section that became their trademark, Shining Star was more than just a hit. It was a statement of joy in a decade that sometimes felt weighed down by turmoil. Released as the lead single from their breakthrough That's the Way of the World album, the song quickly climbed to the top of both the Billboard Hot 100 and R&B charts. The magic was in its fusion: funk grit, rock muscle, and a gospel heart, all living in the same space. Maurice White's voice carried the warmth of someone who'd lived the struggle and still chose to see the light. And that chorus, soaring, jubilant, unforgettable, felt like it was written for every listener personally, urging you to believe in your own worth. For anyone who lived through 1975, Shining Star was everywhere. You'd hear it blasting from transistor radios on city stoops, from jukeboxes in neighborhood bars, or at summer block parties where the whole street seemed to move in rhythm. It was the kind of song that made you feel taller, like the world wasn't as heavy as it seemed. Even rock fans who usually stuck to Led Zeppelin or Aerosmith couldn't deny its pull. That groove cut across genre lines with ease. The recording itself was a testament to Earth, Wind and Fire's precision and creativity. Every instrument had its moment to shine, from Al McKay's crisp rhythm guitar to the Phoenix horn's blaring accents. Each part added to the song's unstoppable forward motion, and underneath it all was that deep sense of purpose. Maurice White once said he wanted the band's music to uplift, to give people a sense of hope. In Shining Star, You can hear that mission fully realized. A reminder that even in uncertain times, there's something inside each of us worth celebrating. Decades later, Shining Star hasn't lost its spark. It's been sampled, covered, and immortalized in film and television. But nothing touches the original's blend of power and positivity. In the tapestry of 1975, it was a thread of pure gold, a track that brought people together, whether they were swaying in a club, cruising with the windows down, or just dancing in their living rooms. It didn't just soundtrack the year, it lit it up. There's a certain magic in the way "Love Is Alive" creeps in, that deep, pulsing synth line rolling like distant thunder, the rhythm tight and hypnotic. Gary Wright, fresh from his time with Spooky Tooth, stepped into his solo career with a vision: blend rock's grit with the shimmering possibilities of synthesizers. On his breakthrough album, The Dream Weaver, this track became the darker, groovier counterpart to its more ethereal title song. With its minimal guitar presence and focus on keys, it felt futuristic in '75. A sound that hinted at where rock could go without losing its soul. The bass and drums lock into a groove that feels almost trance-like, but it's Wright's vocal, smooth, soulful, and urgent, that gives the song its heartbeat. Lyrically, "Love Is Alive" is a celebration. But musically, it simmers rather than shouts, making it perfect for those late-night FM sessions when you're driving alone, headlights stretching into the dark. It's the kind of song that works its way under your skin, not with bombast, but with that steady, irresistible pulse. In the summer of '75, you could hear it everywhere, floating out of dorm room windows, tucked between Led Zeppelin and Fleetwood Mac on rock playlists, or warming up crowds before the headliners hit the stage. For many, it was the soundtrack to quiet moments. A first slow dance, a long talk under the stars, a shared glance that said more than words ever could. It was proof that rock didn't always need to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes it just needed the right groove. "Love Is Alive" climbed to the top of the charts the following year, cementing Gary Wright's place in the mid-'70s rock landscape. And decades later, its influence can be heard in countless tracks that fuse rock with electronic textures. But no matter how many times it's been reinterpreted, the original still feels like a warm night in '75, when love wasn't just a feeling, it was a living, breathing force set to music. There's a certain kind of song that doesn't just play, it breathes. "Take It to the Limit" is one of those rare tracks, swelling with emotion, carried by Randy Meisner's plaintive vocals that climb higher and higher until they seem ready to break under the weight of longing. Nestled on the One of These Nights album, it stood apart from the slick harmonies and radio-ready polish that defined much of the Eagles' mid-'70s output. This was stripped-down vulnerability, wrapped in a waltz-like rhythm and lush instrumentation that built to a breathtaking crescendo. The arrangement is deceptively simple. Soft piano lines, gentle acoustic strumming, and that unmistakable Eagles harmony. Each voice falling perfectly into place like pieces of a worn leather puzzle. But the magic is in the restraint. It's a slow burn, one that doesn't rush to the chorus, instead letting each verse sink in like a letter you're reading for the third time, because you're not ready to let it go. For so many in '75, this wasn't just a song, it was a late-night companion, the kind of track you'd hear on the radio after midnight, headlights carving through empty streets, and feel like the DJ was speaking directly to you. It captured that restless yearning we've all felt at one time or another, the urge to chase something bigger, the fear of coming up short, and the bittersweet comfort of knowing you tried. Randy Meisner co-wrote it with Don Henley and Glenn Frey, but it's his trembling, soaring delivery that defines the song. That final, sustained high note has become the stuff of rock legend, a moment of pure catharsis that can still send shivers down the spine. It's not just impressive, it's human, the sound of someone giving everything they have in the space of a few seconds, though it never hit #1. "Take It to the Limit" became a staple of the Eagles' live shows, often serving as a set list closer. Fans would hold their breath waiting for that climactic note, cheering as if they'd just witnessed a high-wire act without a net. Even now, it remains one of the most beloved deep cuts from a band already overflowing with classics. Decades later, it's still a reminder of a time when rock wasn't afraid to slow down and let the emotions lead. In the grand, bustling soundtrack of 1975, Take It to the Limit was a moment of stillness, the kind that stays with you long after the final note fades.
Rhiannon rings like a bell through the night. Wouldn't you love to love her?
From the moment Stevie Nicks' voice floats in, Rhiannon feels like it's been here forever, ancient, mystical, and yet somehow perfectly in step with 1975. Inspired by a Welsh goddess from an old novel Nicks had read, the song is a swirl of myth and modernity. Lindsey Buckingham's sharp, chiming guitar cuts through the haze, John McVie's bass anchors the rhythm, and Mick Fleetwood's drums roll steady like a heartbeat. It's rock, yes, but with an undercurrent of something supernatural, a spell woven in 4/4 time. The track appeared on Fleetwood Mac, the band's first album with Nicks and Buckingham, and it quickly became one of the defining moments of their new era. Before this, Fleetwood Mac was a respected blues rock outfit. But Rhiannon signaled a transformation, not just in sound, but in presence. Nicks' performance turned her into a rock icon almost overnight, her shawl-draped silhouette and hypnotic stage presence becoming as unforgettable as the song itself. In 1975, hearing Rhiannon on the radio was like being invited into another world. It was the kind of song that made you turn the volume up just a bit higher, lean back in your chair, and let the story take you somewhere else. For fans, it was more than music. It was an atmosphere. You could imagine the wind in your hair on a late-night drive, the moon hanging low, the song's haunting refrain echoing in your mind long after it ended. The magic wasn't just in the studio recording. Rhiannon became a showstopper in Fleetwood Mac's live sets. Nicks would extend the song into a nearly 6-minute performance, her voice growing wilder and more impassioned with each verse. Audiences were entranced, and critics began to speak of her with the kind of reverence usually reserved for rock's most enigmatic frontmen. Lyrically, Rhiannon is all mystery, part love song, part warning, part character study. Nicks herself once called it about a woman taken by the wind, and that feeling of freedom, danger, and beauty is in every note. It was a bold contrast to the confessional singer-songwriter movement of the time, proving that rock could still be theatrical, even mystical, without losing its emotional core. Decades later, Rhiannon remains a staple not just of Fleetwood Mac's catalog, but of classic rock radio itself. It's one of those songs that seems to exist outside of time, capable of captivating a 17-year-old hearing it for the first time just as easily as it did their parents back in '75. And when Nicks sings that final refrain, it still feels like a spell being cast, one you're not sure you want to break. Few songs announce themselves with as much swagger as Tush. Clocking in at just under 3 minutes, it's a masterclass in how to pack a whole lot of grit, groove, and good humor into a tight rock and roll package. From the opening guitar lick, Billy Gibbons' tone is pure Texas gold, warm, dirty, and dripping with blues influence. Backed by Dusty Hill's rolling bass and Frank Beard's rock-solid drumming, Tush is the kind of song that could get a bar crowd stomping before the first verse even finished. Released on ZZ Top's Fandango album, Tush was their first single to break into the top 20 on the Billboard Hot 100. While the title raised more than a few eyebrows, the band never pretended it was anything other than what it was, a playful, good-time blues rock anthem. Gibbons himself once joked that Tush in Texas slang could mean the best, and for fans in '75, this song fit that description perfectly. It was sharp, catchy, and impossible to hear without a grin spreading across your face. In the mid-'70s, ZZ Top were already legends in their home state, but Tush helped push them onto the national stage. It was a fixture on FM radio, the kind of track DJs loved to slide in between heavier numbers because it kept the energy high. For many, it became a road trip staple. Windows down, dust kicking up behind the tires, and Gibbons' raspy vocals cutting through the wind. Live, Tush was a guaranteed crowd pleaser. Dusty Hill often took the lead vocal, adding an extra layer of grit to the already raucous tune. The band's chemistry was undeniable. 3 musicians locked in so tight it felt like they were reading each other's minds. And in an era when rock was growing more elaborate and studio-polished, ZZ Top reminded everyone that sometimes all you need is a killer riff, a driving beat, and a little bit of attitude. Looking back, Tush stands as one of the purest distillations of ZZ Top's appeal. No frills, no filler, just straight ahead, good time rock with a bluesy heart. It's the kind of song that doesn't age because it never tried to be anything other than fun. In the wide, eclectic soundtrack of 1975, Tush was a reminder that rock and roll could still be simple, sweaty, and downright joyful. And sometimes, that's exactly what we need. Paul McCartney has always had a gift for making joy sound effortless, and in 1975, Listen to What the Man Said was that joy bottled into 3.5 minutes of pure sunshine. The lead single from Venus and Mars, it wasn't the gritty rock anthem of the year. It was something else entirely, breezy, melodic, and irresistibly warm. It carried the kind of optimism that felt tailor-made for summer afternoons. The arrangement glides along on a buoyant rhythm, anchored by Denny Lane's guitar and Linda McCartney's soft harmonies, with a playful jazz touch, courtesy of New Orleans sax legend Tom Scott. McCartney's songwriting here is deceptively simple. Verses that flow like a conversation, a chorus that blooms like a smile. It's a love song at its core, but it's painted with broader strokes, warmth, trust, and that easy confidence only the former Beatle could deliver without crossing into saccharine territory. And that hook, "Love is fine for all we know," wasn't just catchy, it was quietly affirming. The kind of line that could stick with you through both good days and bad. In '75, you could hear it everywhere. It floated from car radios on back roads and city streets alike, soundtracking picnics in the park, lazy evenings on porches, and long drives with no particular destination. It had that unmistakable McCartney touch, the same knack for melodic magic that made Beatles songs timeless, but filtered through the more relaxed, easygoing Wings aesthetic. For many fans who'd followed him from Beatlemania into this next chapter, it was proof that Paul still had that spark, even if the stage lights and screaming crowds were behind him. The track shot to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming one of Wings' signature hits. Critics praised its craftsmanship, but for listeners, it wasn't about structure or studio work. It was about how it made them feel. It was a reminder that rock in the mid-70s didn't have to be loud or rebellious to matter. Sometimes, the softest touch carried the deepest resonance. Decades later, Listen to What the Man Said still feels like a postcard from a better day. It's the sound of open windows, sun-warmed vinyl, and the belief that love, in all its messy, beautiful forms, is still worth chasing. In the kaleidoscope of 1975's rock landscape, McCartney carved out his own corner, bright, melodic, and endlessly welcoming. And sometimes, that's exactly the voice you need cutting through the static. Old Days isn't just a song, it's a scrapbook. From the opening piano riff, buoyed by bright brass stabs and a rolling groove, Chicago takes you on a ride through memory lane that feels both personal and universal. Written by James Pankow and sung with soulful ease by Peter Cetera, it's an affectionate ode to childhood, to the simpler pleasures of youth, and to the culture that shaped a generation. The blend of rock, pop, and jazz, Chicago's signature, is in full force here, making it impossible to stand still while listening. Released on their Chicago 8 album, Old Days was instantly relatable for anyone who'd grown up in the 50s and 60s. Pankow's lyrics painted a vivid picture. Comic books, baseball cards, Saturday matinees, and the unmistakable glow of black and white television. It's nostalgia without the melancholy, a joyful celebration of where we came from, and the little things that helped define us. Cetera's voice carries a warm sincerity, while the band's horn section bursts with energy, adding that distinctive Chicago punch. In 1975, hearing Old Days on the radio felt like catching up with an old friend. For baby boomers coming of age in the 70s, it was a reminder of the world they'd grown up in, before adulthood's pressures set in, before the music business became more calculated, before the world felt quite so complicated. You could be driving down a suburban street in late spring, windows down, the scent of freshly cut grass in the air, and this song would come on, making you smile without even realizing it. The arrangement itself mirrors that sentimentality. There's an easy looseness to the rhythm, a playful back and forth between guitar and horns, and a chorus that feels tailor-made for singing along. It's no surprise the song climbed the Billboard charts and became a fan favorite at live shows. Chicago knew exactly how to make a stadium crowd feel like they were all sharing the same personal memory. Old Days has endured because it taps into something timeless. The references might be rooted in a specific era, but the feeling, looking back fondly at the touchstones of youth, is something everyone can relate to. Decades later, it still plays on classic rock stations, still makes set lists, and still sparks that instinctive grin. In a year packed with rock anthems and boundary-pushing sounds, Chicago gave us a reminder that sometimes the most powerful songs aren't about the future. They're about honoring the past. Few songs hit the airwaves with the kind of raw, jolt-you-awake energy that Black Betty brought in 1975. Built on a driving guitar riff and an unrelenting beat, the track felt like it had been stripped down to the bare essentials of rock: rhythm, power, and attitude. Ram Jam took an old African-American work song, one with roots going back decades, and gave it a hard rock makeover, layering in distorted guitars, pounding drums, and a vocal delivery that crackled with urgency. From the first note, it was impossible to ignore. The riff was as catchy as it was relentless, locking into a groove that demanded you move, whether you were at a house party, leaning against a jukebox, or behind the wheel on a long highway stretch. The chorus, with its call and response punch, wasn't just a hook, it was an adrenaline shot. For rock fans in '75, Black Betty was a reminder that sometimes the simplest ideas hit the hardest. The song's backstory made it even more interesting. Versions of Black Betty had been recorded by blues and folk musicians for decades, but Ram Jam's treatment was unapologetically rock and roll, loud, fast, and built for FM radio. Critics were divided. Some saw it as too raw, too repetitive, but fans? They cranked it up. It became a party anthem, the kind of track you'd hear blaring out of garage speakers as friends worked on their cars, or out of barroom sound systems just before last call. For many, it was tied to memories of nights when the music was loud enough to drown out everything else. The laughter, the shouting, even the pounding of your own heartbeat. It wasn't a song you analyzed. It was a song you felt. The groove worked its way into your muscles. The rhythm kept you hooked, and before you knew it, you were shouting along to that unforgettable chorus. Even decades later, Black Betty holds its place in rock history as one of the leanest, meanest singles of the '70s. It didn't try to be polished or profound. It just aimed to hit you square in the chest and keep you moving. In the crowded soundscape of 1975, with stadium rock growing bigger and more elaborate, Ram Jam cut through the noise with something raw, fast, and impossible to forget. Sometimes, all you need is a killer riff and a beat that doesn't quit. By 1975, Take It Easy had already been a hit for the Eagles. But that summer, Jackson Browne reclaimed it on stage in a way that felt like a homecoming. His easygoing delivery, backed by a band that knew every nook and cranny of the tune, gave the song a warmth that wrapped around the crowd like a late July evening. It wasn't just a performance, it was an invitation to slow down, breathe, and remember that not every road needs to be run at full speed. Brown's version stripped away a little of the Eagles' polish, letting the song's country rock roots shine through. Acoustic guitars rang bright, pedal steel lines drifted lazily over the top, and the rhythm section kept things as steady as a heartbeat. You could feel the audience leaning in, smiling, singing along to a song that had become a kind of shared language for anyone chasing open highways and wide horizons in the 70s. In that moment, Take It Easy wasn't about chart success or radio play. It was about connection. It was about couples swaying together under the summer stars, the friends with arms over each other's shoulders, the strangers who somehow knew all the same words. Songs like this had a way of erasing distance, making you feel like part of something bigger, even if just for a few minutes. And that's the beauty of 1975's rock scene. It wasn't all about the biggest riffs or the loudest amps. Sometimes, the most lasting moments came from songs that reminded you to pause, to look around, and to be grateful for the ride. Brown's live Take It Easy was one of those moments, and for the fans who were there, it's a memory that's never faded. And there you have it, 10 unforgettable tracks from 1975, each one a snapshot of a year when rock music was more than sound. It was a way of life. These songs weren't just played, they were lived, woven into road trips, summer nights, and the soundtrack of our youth. Their riffs, harmonies, and stories still echo across the decades, reminding us why we fell in love with music in the first place. Which of these takes you back the most? Drop your memories below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, keep the vinyl spinning.